Star Trek. Picard Season 3 surprisingly killed a lot of TNG characters. When Star Trek, Picard returned for its third and final season, fans expected nostalgia, closure, and the long-awaited reunion of the next generation crew. What they didn't fully anticipate, however, was just how many familiar faces from the TNG era would meet their end along the way. While the season celebrated friendship, loyalty, and legacy, it also carried an unmistakable undercurrent of loss. Many characters tied to the next generation either died on screen or were revealed to have passed away off-screen, reshaping the legacy of TNG in a surprisingly somber way. In many ways, Picard Season 3 served as both a grand farewell and an unexpected reckoning. Let's take a look at how the show shockingly thinned the ranks of TNG characters, sometimes with quiet mentions, and other times with gut-punching drama. 1. Ro Laren's final sacrifice. One of the most talked about losses in Picard Season 3 was Ro Laren, the Byron officer who famously betrayed Starfleet during TNG. Her return was both shocking and cathartic, as she confronted her complicated history with Jean-Luc Picard. After years of unresolved tension, the two finally reconciled, with Picard admitting his disappointment in her wasn't just about betrayal, it was also rooted in the fact that he truly cared about her. Just as audiences were beginning to hope for a redemption arc that would continue, Rose sacrificed herself in a desperate act to give Picard and his crew a fighting chance against the Changelings. Her death was heroic, but undeniably tragic. For longtime fans, it felt like both closure and heartbreak, the kind of goodbye that honored her complex legacy while reminding us how fleeting even reconciliations can be. 2. Admiral Shelby's brutal exit. If Rose's death carried emotional weight, Admiral Elizabeth Shelby's death was a ruthless shock. Shelby, once the ambitious officer who clashed with Riker during the best of both worlds, returned briefly in Season 3 to showcase just how far her career had gone, now commanding the USS Enterprise F. Her moment of triumph was fleeting, however, as the Changelings' infiltration of Starfleet led to her sudden and brutal death. Fans had waited decades to see what became of Shelby, only for her return to last mere minutes before she was cut down. It was a pointed reminder that Picard Season 3 wasn't interested in playing it safe with legacy characters. 3. David Marcus' indirect losses echo. Though not directly part of TNG, Season 3's references to past family tragedies brought back the memory of other Starfleet children who never lived to see their parents' legacies fully realized. For Jean-Luc Picard, the theme of lost or absent children haunted his relationship with Jack Crusher, while also reminding fans of the long history of generational struggles in Star Trek. This wasn't a literal death within TNG, but the specter of lost children threaded through the season and made the deaths of returning characters feel even more weighted. 4. The Changeling Massacre. Beyond familiar names, Season 3 underscored the violence of Starfleet's infiltration by the Changelings. Countless Starfleet officers, some of whom would have been young cadets inspired by TNG's era, were slaughtered or assimilated into the Dominion plot. This wasn't a single character's death, but rather a collective tragedy that underscored the stakes of the conflict. For viewers, it carried the grim message that the utopia of the Federation was not untouchable, and that the cost of victory would always involve sacrifice. 5. Data's second death and rebirth. Perhaps the most bittersweet of all was Data. Though Picard Season 1 had already given him a poignant farewell, Season 3 revisited the android in a bold way. The resurrection of Data, blended with aspects of lore, B4, and Alton Soong's work, meant that Brent Spiner got to play his most iconic role once more. But before the new Data could emerge, the old fragments of lore and other personalities had to effectively die. This wasn't a traditional death, but it was still framed as a transformation that required sacrifice. For long-term fans, it represented the closure of one chapter of Data's life while giving birth to a new beginning, one that felt earned, even if it meant saying goodbye to parts of who he was. 6. Beverly Crusher's off-screen losses. Beverly Crusher's return carried its own shadows of grief. In dialogue, she revealed the many hardships she endured raising Jack Crusher in isolation, including losing close colleagues and allies along the way. While not all these deaths were shown or named, they contributed to the season's atmosphere of loss. The absence of Wesley Crusher, who had ascended to a higher plane in Picard Season 2, also hung heavily over her story, making